another story that I'm super, super excited to share is that the first time I touched a Formula One car, and that was like spectacular, like absolutely spectacular. So I'm a huge F1 guy. Like I said so in this video that I completely love F1 so much. It's been a real big part of me in terms of like my passion for motorsport came from F1 primarily. So it's just been exciting to just like talk about this because I never thought that I'd get a chance to touch an F1 car, given like that I'm in South Africa and races don't happen this often. But what happened is back in the early tens, in 2012 and 2013, the Top Gear Festival came to Durban. So I was living in Durban at the time. And part of the package of Top Gear is that the Top Gear would have one of the F1 teams at the time bring their cars. And they would just do demonstration runs and all that. And the first year I went was in 2012. That was awesome. The Mercedes guys brought their Mercedes down at um, W something. I don't know. I'm not a Mercedes guy, so I wouldn't even know. But it was an actual I think 2011 F1 car they had at the time, and they did a demo of it, and like to hear it in real life, to hear that V8 scream in real life was just it was so unreal. But it really like at the time I just got the tickets. I was a bit broke, so I kind of put together money to get the tickets exactly. So I didn't have the best tickets. So at the time there had these passes where you had the gold, was the bronze, silver, and gold packages, and the platinum was for like all access. And what I happened to get at the time was the bronze, which gave us access to like the paddock of all the cars and the grandstand, so you can actually watch the races, like the support races, those Formula, the Polo, and there was the GT touring cars there as well. Red Bull was there too, doing crazy stunts, of course, with the bikes and the skateboards and the aeroplanes. Um, but yeah, so I didn't have that much access to everything. So there were some areas where if you had a certain pass, you could access it. Like you could do simulator work, you could do certain things like going to like see cars in depth, getting inside the cars. So the first time I went there, I went with my friend Dean, and we basically just could barely see what we could. So obviously the supercars there, the McLarens, Lamborghinis, that was all parked there, and it was great fun. Really, it was great fun. However, it was kind of hard walking around and seeing guys in the hospitality suits, which is what the silver and gold brought. So the silver package had better hospitality suits, and it was so cool just to be around such motoring. And obviously F1 car was there, and at the time, the pass I had wouldn't let us get into the F1 paddock that they had there with the guys there. And I was like, when I saw the F1 car, I was like, whoa, this is like my first time seeing the car. It was like I was moved to see this actual car in real life. I was so moved. Um, but all in all, I was really happy to just be a part of that. And like for me, my life goals were set. I was like, if I died now, I'm happy. I've seen the F1 car. Um, so that was a great festival. Jeremy and the guys were there and all that. The next year's where it really like hit home. So I went again next year, also my friend Dean too. And this year I made that year I made sure that I had the proper all access pass. Like I saved up for it, got the best tickets. I was like, yeah, I can go anywhere I want. Um, and then I went. It just it's a different world when you have access. So like just like before, we saw all the cars, access to hospitality suite, and with that pass I had, I actually got to meet Mika Hakkinen. And at the time, Red Bull brought the F1 car to the festival, and I think Antonio Felix da Costa was the test driver at the time. It was reserved at the time for Red Bull, so he actually drove the car at demo runs. And Mika Hakkinen showed up because there was a Mercedes thing happening as well there, and the actual GT cars showed up, the BMWs and the Audis, the actual touring cars basically. That was great, but what hit home was that I actually had access now to walk into certain areas that I couldn't the year before, and that was just spectacular. It really was. Um, and thereafter, when I was like looking at the cars and all that, I didn't know at first actually that I had access to the F1 paddock. I thought there was a different pass required, but I could actually get into the boundary where like there's like a little kind of fence boundary that was set up with a gap in between for the guys with my pass that had it. And if you were bronze and silver, you'd sit like you stand further back. You couldn't get as close as you wanted to. Um, so I got into that kind of barrier thing, and I didn't realize that my pass was actually like bigger than that. So my platinum pass gave me access to inside where the car was actually at. And at the time, the car was just sitting there with wheels on and all that, getting service for the next run. And so when I first went there, it was cool. Like it's a Red Bull, took photos, it was great. But I couldn't actually get to the car to actually touch it and access it. Um, and so after we see that, the hype dies down. I'm like, I'm happy. I've seen the car, F1 car twice. I already heard the first test run that happened, the first kind of promotion runs. And so I'm just hanging out, we're chilling, having food and all that. And I'm like, cool, I want to walk by to the bathroom. And as I'm going towards the bathroom, I noticed that the car is sitting there with the wheels off, like whole engine cover off, obviously being cooled and serviced. I'm just like, there's nobody there. And then so I went there and I walked up and I told the guy, I'm like, hey chief, can I take photos with the car? Because at the time there was nobody else there. So before the issue was that when I went there were so many people, I never actually had the chance to actually like be with the car on my own. So I was forced to take like obviously fan photos, and they wouldn't let you touch the car, too many people around, which makes perfect sense because you don't want the situation where you have the car damaged or anything like that. But yeah, so I went to the guy, I'm like, yeah, chief, can I just jump in and take a few photos? And he's like, go to your pass. I'm like, ah, show my pass. Like, how? Chief, you can come in. Like, this is actually, you're allowed to do whatever you want. Everybody else was busy with the show. So at the Top Gear Festival, they had, I think, two shows or three shows during the day where Jeremy and the guys would go into the stadium at the time and they'd have a show. So what happens is most of the passes that were bought for my pass actually went to the second show of the day, and they were all gone. And all the bronze guys and all that were all gone, and everybody else was waiting for the second show, watching the other races, which I wasn't watching at the time. Um, and I happened to be eating whatever, and I literally found the window where the car's sitting there, all the mechanics are chilling, minding their own business, and I have access to this paddock facility. I was probably one of 10 guys at the time who didn't actually attend the show, watch the races, and we were all there. Um, so I saw a few guys come in and go, and then I was like, oh, so I can come in. And my heart was like, really? And so I jumped over the barrier, and then when I went in, I was like, oh my word, it's just sitting there, it's standing there. And it was a hot day, so I was sweating and all that. And I'm like, and I touched the car, like I actually physically touched the nose cone of that car, and I was like, oh, just the feeling of this exhilaration came over me. Like I really got so emotional into it. And like I'm like, Riza, I'm sweating so much, like I'm really sweating, like I'm like wiping my face off, and I'm just, and I realized like the guys got in the car, they were laughing at me, like kind of not like a bad way, but they were like kind of like smiling, kind of laughing at me. I'm like, what's wrong? I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Doing something wrong? And I realized that I looked right, and my friend was like, dude, you crying. And like when you told me I was crying, I realized I was actually crying, and I just cried even more. And I think for me, it was the fact that I got to get so close to the sports I love, to actually physically touch that F1 car. It was such a moving experience for me to like, and I'm a Ferrari guy, so a pity it wasn't a Ferrari. And I don't think I'll be able to allow touch Ferrari at the time had the Ferrari been there because they're so protective of this stuff. But the fact that I got to touch a piece of Formula One, like modern Formula One at the time, the V8 generation, was amazing for me. Like it really was amazing. So I took photos of the car and all that, and I was talking to the guys about the different parts of the car and mechanical parts and all that. Like I was around. Like for me, it's so rare to find F1 guys in South Africa, because I think even though it's a big sport globally, in SA we're kind of behind in that aspect, or maybe I haven't met the people yet. So it was nice to actually talk to the guys from Red Bull, the mechanics there, and like talk to them about the different aspects of the car and like how I'm a fan. And they actually pointed out something interesting, that as much as we are petrol heads in South Africa, Formula One is a sport that not everybody understands for its technicalities. I mean, the V8 era is quite simple compared to what it is now, but even then, for many people, it was too complex to understand, which was kind of weird for me because I already knew about it. But like to talk to those guys, the Red Bull guys, and just the simple mechanics. Like these guys are just like the F1 mechanics are actual proper mechanics. They can take apart any car they want altogether. But to speak to mechanics at that higher level and they sound like the same guy would service your brakes is amazing because they have so much more insight and so much more humanity about them. It was incredible just speaking to them like that. Um, so yeah, like after the conversation with them, I spent more time with the car. I just couldn't stop touching it. Like they were like, "Dude, it's just a car. Here's a clock. Might as well wipe it down." I was like, "What?" So I was actually wiping down the car, like after I was touching it. So like I touch it and I feel the steering wheel, and I just feel the side parts and all that stuff. I'm like, "Whoa!" And like when you're done, mate, just wipe it down. I'm like, "Okay." Give me the cloth. I was wiping. I wiped everything down. I took photos of the engine covers. I was wiping. I was like, oh, yeah, but that was my like I'll never forget that day. It was so amazing. It was so amazing for me. And yeah, that's the first time I touched an F1 car. Hopefully not the last time. Like I really hope that after all this happened, the world right now, I actually can get to attend a Grand Prix. The other rumors one coming to SA, so hopefully I can get that done. Like I definitely buy tickets for that. Or actually travel out when I can. Like Abu Dhabi is a close one or Brazil. So but yeah, that's my story about the first time I touched an F1 car. Like it was amazing, and I think it's an experience that I'll never forget.